Welcome back to For the Record. I'm your host, Dr. Justin Allen Rose, News Director and Political Analyst at KSWO. And this episode is going to be a different one than most, and that's because I don't have a script, I didn't write nothing down, I'm just going to speak from the top of my head over the elections from last night. This is being recorded, what is it today? Wednesday, November 5th, 2025. Of course, just not even a full day out from the Tuesday's elections from yesterday. I mean, the Democratic Party as a whole had a tremendous night. We saw, especially the races that everybody was really focused on. In terms of New York City, we had New Jersey governor, as well as my home state, the Commonwealth of Virginia, having their governor race as well. And oh my goodness, the Democrats cleaned up. No other way to really say it. The Democrats won handily across the board practically. And what's interesting to me, and of course, you're listening to this is the Oklahoma Politics Podcast, so you're probably wondering, what the heck does this have to do with Oklahoma? Well, it could very well highlight things that could come to Oklahoma come 2026 next year. Of course, we have our own gubernatorial election next year, and so that could show us kind of a preview of what that might look like, but also it kind of shows us where the nation's at. And we can sort of compare what is taking place or what took place in Virginia, a little bit in New Jersey, and kind of look at it through the Sooner State lens. And that's what this podcast is practically going to be. I'm just going to talk about these elections and what this might mean for Oklahoma. And so let's just get down into it. We have Abigail Spanberger, a very centrist candidate in Virginia. And I'm really going to focus on Virginia for this podcast. And that's not just because it's my home state, love it, miss it, what have you. But it's because I really do believe that Virginia is the most comparable state in terms of the three I just listed to Oklahoma. Of course, it's wildly different. Don't get me wrong. And if you lived in both states like I have, you know that. However, we can still glean stuff from that state and compare it to Oklahoma. I don't know New Jersey all too well, and of course, New York City is a beast all in its own. And so we're going to stick really solely with Virginia. And so Spanberger, very centrist, a very bipartisan candidate. So what does that tell us for Oklahoma come 2026? Well, look at the Democratic candidate that we have so far right here. Only one has announced her candidacy, and that is, of course, Cindy Munson, who is the current Oklahoma House Minority Leader. And she is also somebody who is very bipartisan, very centrist in terms of the Democrat ideology. It's going to be interesting to see. Of course, I know Oklahoma, all 77 counties voted for Donald Trump the past 3 times he ran. I get that, and I get we haven't seen a Democrat win a statewide election practically since Broward Henry. Again, I get that. But let's look at Virginia. Virginia, if you watch CNN, watch MSNBC, watch Fox News, what have you, sometimes they might call it a blue state, Virginia. And while, yes, it does have very blue tendencies, growing up in Virginia, there's red pockets throughout the state. If it wasn't for, Alexandria, the pockets right kind of underneath Washington, D.C., it wouldn't be as strongly blue at all, like it is now. And so if you look at those red states, or the red counties in Virginia, let's look at them a little bit and talk about them. And first and foremost, let's look at the differences first. In terms of conservatism in the Republican Party compared to Virginia to Oklahoma, the biggest difference is that Oklahoma is a little bit more religious conservative, a lot more religiosity within their politics in terms of the Republican Party, while Virginia is a little bit more old-style Republicans in terms of state rights, gun rights, and so forth. The social issues, the gay marriage, abortion rights, those sorts of social issues, morality social issues that some on the Christian right might call them. They don't really play too well in Virginia in terms of the Republican Party. So the primaries, the traditional conservative primary voter in Virginia won't be really too focused on those morality issues, let's say, than the Oklahoma Republican voter. And so that is one difference we might see within this coming into 2026 for Oklahoma, that we won't be able to really compare Virginia to Oklahoma. However, we saw every single county in Virginia trend to the blue side. That does not paint a good picture for, let's say, the Oklahoma Republican Party here. Now, I'm not saying that this is a situation in which the Oklahoma Republican Party needs to act as if the House is on fire. No, they still have a crazy supermajority in the Oklahoma legislature, and I would assume at the end of November in 2026 election day that they will still have a supermajority. However, the notion that pretty much the top issue for the majority of the voters yesterday was the economy, the cost of living. And that is something Cindy Munson is really hitting on in her messaging right here already, whether it's on X, whether it is in her rallies, whether it is in her town halls. She is hitting the cost of living hard. Really those bread and butter, those kitchen table issues. She's hitting hard on them. And so that is something that might resonate with Oklahoma voters. And you might think, well, we're still very conservative, very Republican. But again, Cindy Munson is not somebody that I believe that is going to be accurately or within ads can be painted as very liberal in terms of left-wing radicalism, in terms of radical liberal. She's not going to be able to be painted as that as much as maybe other candidates if they ran. It doesn't mean Republicans might not try, but I don't think it's going to have that scare factor as we might have seen in other candidates. And so the whole notion of socialism, the very far left kind of scare tactics that we sort of see, and again, this is not me damning the Republican Party in terms of their strategies. No, political strategy, it works. However, I don't think it's going to work in this case to the extent that it might have worked in previous elections. Because again, Cindy Munson is not preaching anything too radical. It's really kind of down the middle, bread and butter issues. And so that's going to play well for her. And then you also look at the messaging that we have been seeing so far on the Republican side of the top two leaders in that race for governor. We have Charles McCall and we have Gentner Drummond. Both of them are trying to paint themselves as more far right than the other person. Of course, Charles McCall started very well if you want to look at strategic wise. Did very well in terms of painting Drummond as more Democrat leaning than what McCall is. And so he even did the whole Never Trump Drummond website trying to claim that Drummond is never Trump, doesn't like Trump, or donated to past Democratic candidates and so forth. Well, now, just I believe either yesterday or the day before that, I see Drummond doing the same thing to McCall. He has the McCall website now. They're trying to claim McCall is a Democrat from the past of the Obama era. And so now we're seeing both the top two candidates in that race really throwing mud in terms of trying to make themselves seem more far right. And it's typically when we look at, the notion of being far right, we're not looking at economic issues here. We're looking at social issues that had played well maybe in the past for Donald Trump, 2020, 2024, as we have seen. And so we're seeing them really focusing on social issues, not bread and butter, not the economy. And so how is that going to play in terms of the voters' minds? Are we going to see them look at the Republican candidates and think, well, they're not really speaking towards me because my family's hurting in terms of trying to put food on the table for my family. And so how is that going to affect them when they go to the ballot box in November? And we also could see maybe it's going to depend on whether or not the Republicans nominate Drummond or McCall for that seat, for that candidacy. Maybe Munson might play better against Drummond or McCall. I'm not too sure. I haven't seen the numbers in terms of Munson's numbers. I've seen Republican numbers, what have you. McCall is steady rising against Drummond, but I've yet to see any numbers come out of the Munson side. But basically, to boil it down here, again, not a too long of a podcast here, but just to boil it down, I wanted to get in here and talk about what this election might mean for Oklahoma. Just to boil it down, it really shows that we could be in for a fun race come 2026. It might not be a landslide that we have seen in past elections. It might not be as such of an early call come election night because people are concerned about the economy. Trump campaigned on coming out and saying the first day, basically, I'm going to help with grocery prices. We haven't really seen that too much, or at least on the minds of the voters, because poll after poll, they're still concerned about the economy. They're still concerned about the cost of groceries and so forth. And so how is that going to play? We saw in this past in 2024. I mean, we're not even I guess we're basically, yes, just 1 year out from that election. People cared about the economy then, and what happened? They blamed the Democratic Party because they were in control. Now the Republican Party's in control, and look what happened when the economy didn't really jump back like they might have wished it would. They blamed the Republicans. Again, it's pocketbook voting we see every single time. Wherever the economy goes, so do the voters. And so if you're in power and the economy's doing bad, you're probably going to get hit hard at the ballot box come next election. Vice versa, if you're in power, the economy's doing good, then we're probably going to see you get rewarded at the ballot box. But and we're seeing now, Trump coming up with his claim for why we saw a large Democratic landslide last night was because of the economic shutdown, which of course probably did play not good on his side in the Virginia race. Of course, there's loads and loads of federal workers residing in Virginia. But I don't think that was it. It wasn't like the government shutdown was the top thing people were worried about. No, it's the economy, the cost of living. And doesn't seem like it's trending downward anytime soon. And so come 2026, as we gear towards this next legislative session, that's going to be interesting as well to see if any bills are going to be passed even more to try to combat the cost of living. And as we get closer to the primaries, especially the Republican primary, are they going to gear toward more kitchen table issues, or are they going to stick to the more cultural conservative side, let's say? And then, of course, Munson. What will she really define her campaign on? Is it going to be education, the cost of living, everything kind of boil into one? What is it going to be? That's going to have a large effect as well. And so going into 2026, I'm going to keep a close eye on social media because that's what I love. I get to see what they're talking about in real time. I'm going to keep a close eye on it and, of course, bring you any updates as soon as I got them. This has been another episode of For the Record. I'm your host, Dr. Justin Allen Rose. Thanks for listening.